This is a question about the fan journey, the buddy system. I DM'd my Facebook page likes offering a link to our new single and got a whole lot of blowback. Anyone else? So it sounds like you cold DM'd everybody with your link.
Right.
Yeah, that'll happen. I
hate that. I hate getting that.
Imagine scraping an email list of like hip hop fans or rock fans, or buying an email list and then cold emailing a whole bunch of people a link to your hot new track. How's that going to go over?
Yeah.
Not too well.
You are now listening to the Creative Juice podcast, brought to you by Entrepreneur.io.
What's up, Indies? Welcome back to the Creative Juice podcast. I am your hostess, Corrin Campbell. With me is a hoster, Jack McCarthy. How's it going, Jack?
What's up? It's going great. Hostess with the mostest, hoster with the toaster. I don't know. Welcome to Tuesday, everyone.
Well, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, whenever you're listening to this, super glad to have you. I don't see the need for us to delay much longer for this episode.
This is going to be a fun one.
Yeah, we basically told you guys to put us in the hot seat and ask us some questions. We have frequently asked questions in our groups. There are lots of answers to your questions in those various groups if you're in there. But nonetheless, we get questions still and again. So we decided that we're going to answer some of those today. And I'm stoked. I like talking. So when people ask me questions, I feel like I don't have to think as much about what I'm talking about. Does that make any sense?
It absolutely makes sense.
Otherwise, it's just a stream of consciousness, right?
This will keep us on track. You guys will kep us on track these next 2 weeks.
Well, we shall see.
We'll see about that.
We shall see. It's a high bar for me. But I'm excited to get into this because I know that, we have a lot of really basic principles that we teach within our trainings and that we talk about. But it doesn't always mean that, we can give you kind of an outline, but sometimes there's, little details and little facets of these things. And so, and there's some things that we don't have in trainings yet that we're going to be getting in trainings probably as soon as you think of it. That said, we opened it up. We wanted to know what kind of questions Indies had, and we've got some great selections for today. So, Jack, you've got the list. Why don't you kick us off?
All right, let's kick it off. I think this will be fun. Rather than going rapid fire against one another, let's just open up these questions and then talk about it.
Let's work together.
Yeah, let's work together on this. I think it'll be fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's dive in. So here's a question that I think is a pretty good one. It says, hey, I've got a fan in Australia who leaves my songs on repeat for days shortly after I release them. Hundreds and even thousands of fake streams. It messes up all my ratios, and I'm not sure that Spotify likes, dislikes, cares about it. If you were me, would you ask her to stop? I've got a good relationship with her. She's one of my Patreon patrons, and I don't think she'd take it bad. So it seems like this question is kind of about when a fan means well, but might be kind of messing you up in the process with what they're doing.
Well, it's funny because, there have even been artists that do this. I feel like now somebody's going to go Google it and be like, it wasn't her, but I felt like Lady Gaga or maybe Justin Bieber. It was one of these like big artists, right? And they made playlists on YouTube, and they were like, just go set it on repeat and play it over and over. And, they were actually soliciting this kind of thing. So it's, I think when it comes down to it, like if it were me, I just wouldn't worry about it, because really, like if you think about Spotify, I don't know. There's just so many streams. And the thing is, Spotify knows it's that one user, So I don't think that it's going to weigh the data the way it would if it was 1,000 people streaming at once, It's just that one person really, really likes your stuff a lot as far as like the machine would see it. At least that's my take on it.
Yeah, I think my take is, you certainly hear about people getting their songs pulled down by Spotify for, streaming scams, if you want to call it that, where they collectively have a mass amount of their fans like play their songs overnight. I believe I believe a few years ago, there was even a band that did like a totally silent album that they had their fans play overnight. I forget who it was, but this is coming to my mind. And you hear about people getting in hot water with Spotify for that kind of stuff. But for a one-off sort of situation like this, where it's one person doing it, I don't know if I would go to the trouble of like, outing yourself to Spotify for one, like if you were thinking about going down that road, or even like talking to the fan, like, I don't know. I don't really think it's necessary personally. I wouldn't, I'm with you there that like, I don't think it's going to skew your data super heavily towards like a demographic or something if it's just one person.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and I think that actually applies to a lot of different things, right? When you're talking about whether it's your ad data, whether it's your website data, whether it's your streaming data, engagement data, right? I mean, we talk all the time about keeping your audiences as clean as possible. Like last week we were talking about, avoiding engagement pods, or was that 2 weeks ago? Whenever that was, it was brilliant. We were talking about engagement pods, and that can do damage to your data, but we're also talking about a lot of users at that point, right? Whereas, one or two people doing that, from the way I understand it, and maybe we should, call Circa, but from the way I understand it is that Spotify is still going to see that that's just one user. So it's, the Spotify machine is very similar to the Facebook machine in that it knows when one user is doing something 1,000 times versus 1,000 people doing something one time. And it means something very different in the equations than the results of what happens. When it's a lot of people, for example, all you indies who love hacking my funnels.
Ooh, here we go.
I love you a ton, but please stop doing that. Because, I get a lot of hits, a lot of mailing list signups. I have a lot of people signing up for my membership now, for the Gilded experience. And, that does throw data off a lot. In fact, Greasy is developing a swipe library for the Indie Pro website specifically so you don't have to do that to any of us.
It's a wonderful initiative.
Right. So when you're talking about, hundreds of people across the world with a lot of different behavior sets and all of that, then maybe it can start impacting your data. The same thing is true like when we're talking about ads, right? If you invite your family members to like your page, but it's only 5 people, that's not going to do nearly as much damage as if you're like asking all 3,000 of your friends to like your page, especially if that outnumbers the number of people who would like it because they actually like the music, right? So yeah, I mean, I think that's something that it applies to data all across the board. So when we have cautionary tales about advertising to red light countries or questionable countries and bot traffic, I mean, bot traffic by its very nature comes en masse, right? And it's enough individual users as the machine sees it to cause data problems. And so, that's actually why we recommend against, certain red light countries and, places that are highly suspect for bots, is because those en masse numbers will override your real numbers. So, but in the case of this one person, I wouldn't worry too much about it. Just think about that dynamically throughout your data. Like when you're doing various things, don't be afraid of few people who might be doing something like that. And hey, that fan is paying you 0.03 of a cent or whatever it is. So thank her even more beyond being a patron. She's also helping you out with those fractions of a penny.
Yeah, totally. I actually think that this kind of applies to one other point that came to my mind when I read the question, just about like your music business as a whole. Here's an example from the IndieX agency. One of our clients was kicking off a street team, a digital street team, and they were pretty excited about it. And we're really spearheading a lot of the management of it themselves. We had ideated on it together and built out what it was going to look like. And they came to us in a meeting and they were like, hey, Jack, like, here's the problem though. We have a fan who has kind of already been doing this for us. Like they've been kind of, unofficially running a street team of people in our Facebook group. They have a Facebook group for their fans. and this one person was kind of a ringleader of a few people that were acting as their street team already, unofficially with, no title or anything like that, kind of just like doing stuff because they cared about the band. Pretty cool. Downside, they also were like, other fans have complained about this person because, she's been a little like pushy and bossy and, a little harsh on people, and we don't really know what to do about it. She means well, but it's kind of throwing things off, and now we're trying to launch this new initiative. What do we do? And this was one of those examples where I think like it does make sense to have a conversation and try to like appeal to the goodwill of the fan who's already doing something for you and steer that into the direction that you want it to go, kind of regain control.
Right. Yeah, it's one of those things too. I mean, I've seen that, unofficial Facebook groups of fans of artists. I've moderated some of those. Where, the artist is like, well, we're not going to be in there, but, we want someone from the team to be in there and, keeping their ear to the ground, seeing what the fans are saying, basically being a snoop, but also making sure that, yeah, exactly. Sorry. But also making sure that the environment is conducive, right? And that new fans don't feel like they can't participate, right? Because that does happen, especially if you have a lot of legacy fans. I mean, I have fans from 2008, 2009, and they, and then there are people who are just coming into my music today, tomorrow, and so you want to make sure that those people don't get too possessive of, well, I like the old whatever I've been, I mean, it's good for them to have pride, but not to the point of exclusion,
right.
Words. So that's one thing that you can kind of encourage, that pride, right? There can be a really positive conversation with that person and be like, look, I am, so honored that you are doing this. We want to make sure that this family grows. So I need your help in, having this kind of environment, like nurturing this kind of narrative, whatever it might be. And that, I think that allows someone who obviously is a ringleader enough and motivated enough to, want to start this for you. It probably means that they have some strong personality points. And so that's one way that you can kind of help them direct that personality with the right energy that is, brand conducive.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. That's honestly like interesting, like business development discussions, yeah, that's like team building stuff. It's really interesting. Not a lot of artists get to talk about that, or at least not so early on, especially when it comes to fans.
Yeah, because it's more in the advocacy stage, right? Of the buddy system. And so it's a little further along, but I definitely had to do that with some of my earlier street teams. Some of the ringleaders were just such strong personalities, and I do rock music. And so, it's an aggressive kind of audience most of the time, but not everyone is.
This was also in the rock space. So yeah.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So, but it can apply to any genre really. So yeah, sometimes you just want to make sure that the ownership of those, street team leaders is, in line, and if you even know who they are. And in some cases you might not, but, yeah, it's a good idea to always just make sure that you're as communicative as you can be with those people, to make sure that, if they are promoting certain, things to do, whether it's streaming your stuff or going to watch your videos or things like that, that they, keep in mind that there are terms of service for these various platforms. Totally. And if you do see someone like heading up some giant operation, that's enough users to tip off the machine. So you might want to put the damper on some of those efforts if you're aware of them.
Absolutely. I think that was a great question. And look at us. We like spun it off into a whole different teachable moment.
Well, that's why when you said this is going to keep us focused, I was like, well,
you're lying.
It's a challenge to keep me focused, friends. I apologize.
Yeah. So good. But let's dive into another one here. I think this is a good question. I imagine a lot of indies struggle with this and maybe don't know where to get started. It's about budgeting, specifically budgeting as a grassroots artist. Are commenter says, hey everyone, I've been trying to plan my artist career. Right now I work 3 jobs. I was curious about what you would recommend as a starter budget for an artist with release content that hasn't gotten a lot of exposure. Also, any advice on strategies when you've been promoted on some channels like blogs and magazines. I feel like my content's at a professional level, but I lack a clear direction of what I should do due to my personal finance situation and whatnot. Any advice is greatly appreciated. All of my work is self-produced.
Gotcha. Yeah. Well, I've been in this position, definitely, because, it's funny. I started my career in 2008, 2009. Yes, I'm old. And then I went off and did that Army gig for 6 years, during which I was not allowed to make any money, do any personal touring. Everything had to be, Army affiliated. And so for that period of time, I wasn't really able to pursue my career. And then when I got out of the Army, it needed a whole jump start, right? I wasn't starting over. Fortunately, I do have some fans that kind of stuck with me, but I also lost a lot of fans in that process. And so I was starting over a little bit. And when I got out of the Army, I wasn't rich. Right away. I didn't retire from the military. I just got out, which means they don't pay you, I didn't get retirement or anything crazy like that. So I definitely had to, really lean into the people that I already had. I definitely wouldn't concentrate on like exposure. It's funny. I actually, one of the days in my Gilded experience is talking about, how some dude in the Army was like trying to get me sold on doing some bullshit because of the exposure, right? He was like, this is great exposure for you. And I was like, yeah, but I hate it. He was like, but it's great exposure. And this fan said, just remind those people that humans die from exposure. Wow. And I was like, yeah. And I was like, wow, that's such a good kind of statement, but especially creatives, if you are searching for exposure, that's probably going to get you less than a very small ad spend on, Facebook and Instagram with a fan finder, literally spending, I don't think it's, if you have more, like spending $1 a day on a fan finder is very, very, very slow growth, but it's at least something versus if you were paying $50 for a blog placement, right?
Totally.
So, and even if you got a free blog placement, the chances of something coming from that is very small. When I had the PR team in the beginning of this album cycle, I paid $2,000 a month for the service, and I got on a ton of blogs, and I saw nothing from that. It's very hard to track. It's very hard to then, aside from just spamming your existing fans with links to more of you talking about yourself, there's not a lot of discovery there, unless you land something really huge. And even then, so I would say to save up personally. My thought is that rather than spending $1 a day for a month, put away $1 a day for a month for several months, and then, do a legit, campaign for 60 days or something, with a little bit more budget. But if you're talking about grassroots and a lot of people don't know who you are, I would say just save as aggressively as you can, a few $100s, and then put it all down on one, because in theory you could do that relatively quickly if you just save it up.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. Especially like if you're looking at investing into advertising versus investing into, exposure, promotional things like blogs and PR or playlists or whatever. I would say like in terms of budgeting there, I would plan to focus more of your budget on top of funnel in the advertising space with something like a fan finder. Now, if you're in a place where you already have, and it sounds like you might be, where you already have, blog placements or magazines or maybe some press that's out there. I think a good use of that content that already exists, maybe you got picked up or had some interviews happen. I think if you're running top of funnel with Fan Finder and you're using that for, introduction stage work, awareness building, having that content live on your Facebook page, live on Instagram, getting it out there and then running alongside your, introduction stage campaign, having a education stage campaign, a green light warmth boosting at $1 a day to that warm audience can be a good way to kind of educate those fans that are, or we'll call them listeners because maybe they're not quite fans yet, but those new listeners that are coming into your world, it'll give them something that is sounds like it's of a professional quality in front of them. Just to let them know, like, yeah, I'm somebody that's been doing something.
Right.
That's more, if you've got a little bit of clout behind you, that's a good place to kind of amplify it.
Yeah. And there's services like Sniply, snip.ly. It can be, so the way that Sniply works is essentially you set up the link, like whether it's, say you got a blog, right? You grab the link for that blog placement, like the direct article link, and you insert it into Sniply, and it'll give you basically an option to add a call to action on that page if people click your link. If people click your link, it will display whatever call to action. So it could be message me. It could be, there's a variety of things that you could put there. It's a link. You're basically sending them to another link. So it could be a messenger ref URL or something like that. Sign up for my mailing list by clicking over here. Although don't use sign up for my mailing list as the copy, but
not a
put
good
something
bribe.
creative. Yeah, exactly. Like I just said something that you shouldn't use. I apologize. But so you can have like a call to action. The catch with that is that it's only going to show to people who click on your link. Right? So it's not great for discovery in that way. But as Jack's saying, if you are running a fan finder and people are watching the video and then at a very low budget, you retarget your green light warmth, which could be not only people who currently follow your page, but also people who just saw a certain portion of that video that you were running for fan finder, then it does, like he said, add clout, because it's like, oh, look, there's this person that I recognize. Hopefully your branding is consistent enough where they can see the connection between whatever the, featured image for that blog article is that'll auto-populate. But that's one way that you can get people who have kind of touched your infrastructure somewhere before to get them to this other place where other people are talking about you. And maybe they investigate further and you have that call to action on there. So it's definitely better than just basically, sending people to a blog article with nothing else to do from there.
Yeah, absolutely. You can pixel them. You can send them out with a call to action. There's a lot you can do on that front. Mm-hmm. In terms of budgeting, I hate to give definite, you should budget this much number.
Yeah.
I definitely think saving up money for dedicated campaigns is a really solid way to go. That's just good advice is if you can't be spending, I'll say this, if you can't be spending $10 a day allocating at least that much every month for, top of funnel, then I would say plan on saving money so that you could do that for a while. I would say less than $10 a day for a fan finder running ongoing to really work that introduction stage. Then you want to plan, if you can't be doing that, then you want to be planning to save up some money so that you can for a little bit. That would be, I guess that would be my recommendation, either this or that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and I think that's something that, we talk about that. You can run a fan finder, a video view campaign for less than $10 a day. You can run it as low as $1 a day per ad set, right? So if you only have one audience, you could run $1 a day. If you have 5 audiences, the minimum is $5 a day. But chances are it's really not going to get you as much meaningful data and serve to the right people as if you save the exact same amount of money but did it on a more truncated timetable. And that, that's something that it's difficult because artists want to do stuff right now. And some people aren't great at saving money. All of America, we're not really used to having to do that. But, when you are talking about having restricted financial means, hopefully saving is something that you're willing to do, because if you can spend, like Jack was saying, $10 a day, I agree. I think that you're much better off doing that for 30 days than running $1 a day for 300 days. Because it's just, you're not competitive enough in the auction to find the best people. And it's going to take you forever to get any kind of meaningful data from those less than optimal people, So yeah, I would say get a little teapot and put $1 in there, have a swear jar, whatever it is.
I was just going to say a swear jar is perfect for this.
Dude, I would be rich.
Yeah, me too. Or someone else would be rich off of me.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, make it for your significant other and make them put it in there. But it's incredible. The same thing is true for merch, right? There are a lot of musicians that are like, I can't order a whole run of t-shirts or whatever. And well, firstly, if you are needing t-shirts, there's a great video that Gracie did on the Full Stack Creative channel. That's how to screen print your own stuff. And she did it even with stuff from her house. You don't even have to have a ton of professional equipment for that. But if you are one of those people, really look at, it's just like anything else in your life, anything else that you're saving money for, just put it in a sock drawer somewhere and pay no attention. Because I think if you're going to run advertising, you want to have a little chunk so that you're willing to be like, if this is 100% gone, I'm okay with it. It's not going to impact me, So if that requires saving, that's what I would say to do for sure.
Yeah. And, thinking about like as a grassroots artist, the budget that you need to really make like a critical mass of new listeners, budget definitely has a big effect on this. And I when I say budget, I don't necessarily mean like, oh, I have $500 or I have $1,000. I'm talking about your daily budget, and it kind of creates this snowball effect. Imagine if you have $1 a day and you're able to run that on FanFinder. Well, you're only hitting, you're only reaching a certain number of people a day, which is likely going to only accumulate a certain amount of reaction, a certain amount of engagement. Right. And you need that engagement to build up, especially with FanFinders where you're really looking to create like cultural moments or a sense of discovery. And that sense of discovery happens a lot easier when, crowd psychology kicks in online and people see a video that has tons of comments and a lot of reactions and views. But you can't do that nearly as accurately or as efficiently when, you're only spending $1 a day, because that critical mass and that fast engagement isn't going to build up nearly as fast. So that excitement then isn't going to build up as fast or at all.
Yeah. Well, and let's think about some simple math too, right? Like, so in the ads, there's CPM, right? And this is how much you're paying for 1,000 impressions, not 1,000 people. 1,000 views by an eyeball, regardless of what eyeballs those are. Well, actually per 2 eyeballs, because it's 1 view. Anyway, but, so for me, I can very typically on cold traffic, on people who have not touched my space before, it can be very typical for my CPM to run anywhere between $10 and $12. So that means for 1,000 impressions, I am paying $10. So if I were to run $1 a day for however many days, for 10 days, then it would in theory, and it's not a direct line like that. It doesn't totally work that way. But if you think about the math of that, right? Jack, what are your CPMs looking like at IndieX? Like, are you seeing them a lot lower than that? I mean, my people have been expensive historically. What I've had costs go as low as like $5. So what?
It varies so heavily from audience to audience and campaign to campaign and objective to objective. But
right.
Just for the fun of it, let's just pull up an ad account real quick here. Since I'm in front of the
Here
computer.
we go.
Since I'm in front of the computer, let's pull up an ad account here and just look. Yeah, so I mean, I'm seeing CPMs for one of our clients for video views campaigns right now. I'm seeing CPMs as low as $1,
No.
$1.50. Yeah.
How
pretty
big is
crazy.
that? Or how many people? And then and it depends on budget and audience size, of course, too, right?
Oh yeah, totally.
Yeah, there's too many variables. I kind of was
Yeah, we're
asking the question to hope that you would say that there's too many variables.
There are too many variables.
You were just trying to please me there, but
I don't want to give that example and rule out the fact that there's not too many variables, because then I pull up another ad account here and we're looking at double that cost, sometimes triple that cost. So you can see how like spending $1 a day, that impact could vary really wildly depending on who you are, and not to mention what your video is, what your creative is. This isn't even taking testing into account,
Right. Yeah. And even if we use the 10% rule, right? Which, I mean, again, there are a zillion variables to navigate around it. But if you take the 10% rule, which is that 10% of people at one stage will graduate to the next one, right?
Right.
Which is, again, a very not hard science at all.
I feel like it's so important. It's very important to reiterate this, though.
But it is. So let's say in theory you have really low CPMs. You're spending $1 a day, and your CPM is $1, right? So even if that, which would be probably unlikely, and you got 1,000 impressions in a day. In theory, only 10% of that is going to hit like the 3-second view mark, right? Or the 15-second view mark. I don't know which one. Let's just say let's be generous. Let's say hit the 15-second view mark. So then say it's a couple minutes of video. So then only 10% of those would probably hit your 25%, right? Which is not even what we would consider targetable. So that would be 10 people might hit 25%, and maybe one person hits 50 to 75% of a couple minute video.
Yeah.
Right? So, and that's where we start considering things retargetable. Depending on the length of your video, we're looking at, 2 to 2.5 minutes. So wherever that is in the percentage of your video, which if your video is a minute, it's not even in there. So if you're thinking about the numbers in that way, and you think about the math in that way, you can see how very limiting this is. And that's not even taking into account the auction and the complexities of, people bidding on different people, and that the most desirable people for your results are going to be more expensive, right? So yeah, all of that said, I think it's best if you're in a limited financial situation, save stuff up, squirrel it away. Don't even look at it. Just, put an automatic draft in there or whatever it is that you can afford to do to set aside, and instead do it in kind of a 30-day or 45-day window where you've got this cash that you can just spend on that, and then have something to follow up with those people. Because, you need the, jab, hook. Like, you got to have more than one thing ready to go. So you definitely just want to save it up. Never just run a fan finder forever, guys. Like, if you don't have something following up with those people, you're missing out on a huge opportunity, and you'd be better off saving your money.
Yeah, totally. I think approach your budgeting and your spending like you would budgeting for, paying for a new piece of gear or studio time or something like that. I think like
totally,
it's easy to get caught up at this stage of like, oh, like, where am I going to come up with that money? But like, you come up with money to go into the studio, probably. You come up with money to buy that new piece of gear. You can come up with money to build your fan base. You might just have to save for a little bit.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Well, enough finance lecturing.
Yeah, I love budget questions.
Well, I like budget questions when it's like we can give you more to it than just save up your money. Like, my grandparents would always do that. Just save and save. And it's like, what are you saving for? Like, retirement. Okay, that's 60 years from now. It's hard to find the motivation to save for 50 years right now. Which, I mean, we all should still do that too. But, I want to give everybody kind of like the numbers and the justification for it, to have that delayed gratification, not just financially, but also in running a fan finder and having fans come in. There's a lot to make it worth it. So
Totally.
Hopefully some of those reasons justify why we're talking this way about finance.
Yeah, absolutely. I hope so too. This is a good one. I see this come up from time to time, but here's a pretty specific question about launching fan finders locally versus to green light countries, the pros and cons. What if I direct my fan finder locally? I live in DC. What if I take video performance shots in main areas in the city and then target residents of that city in my ad campaign? Do you think that would launch my fan base faster than targeting like the 6, 9, whatever green light countries? I'll start. No. No,
I'll
it will
second
not.
it. No.
And I don't mean to be...
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, it's just, I know that seems logical, and I understand why people feel that, right? Why they feel like, well, you know, I have stuff that's native to here, so those people are going to identify. First off, I mean, it depends on where you're going in DC, but if you're on the mall in front of the Washington Memorial, Lincoln Memorial, or like all of that is identified by anyone in the United States and possibly a lot of people internationally. If you're talking about like the dives or the, you know, really cultural local type vibes in DC, there's a chance that some people locally won't even recognize that, you know? So,
yeah, I live in DC. And
yeah, exactly.
Probably wouldn't.
Yeah, because, you know, it's very selective. And so first off, like, I don't think that as a passion point or a hook, so to speak, is going to give you enough people, right? Facebook really thrives on large audiences. And, you know, it's possible that, you know, someone's genre of music might not be the most popular genre. I know DC has a lot of really strong hip hop, you know, so if you're not a hip hop artist, and even if you are, you know, yes, in theory, like I think there may be some justifications for trying to move more locally, but I hardly ever would say for a fan finder, that's the right move.
Yeah, I would agree. I think, you know, there's interesting pivots that you can take with this to kind of leverage that angle if you wanted to, and if you had the budget to do so. I'm thinking back to Dukes, who ran one of his fan finders, the car video that he ran as a fan finder, and the headline was just cruising through the streets of LA. And back in the day, Cirque and him ran that to, you know, green light countries, and then also had either a separate ad set or a separate campaign specifically targeting people in LA because that was in the headline. But they weren't relying solely on that audience segment to, you know, quote unquote, launch the fan base. They were, you know, approaching the critical mass from both angles, which I think you'll have more success doing that on a video that has a lot of social proof on it coming from everywhere, you know, because then it's like, oh, like, look at this video with people from all over the place commenting on it and talking to each other. And, oh, wow, this person is local to me. Like, after you've been running that elsewhere, you know, wide, if you start running local traffic after that, I think you'll tend to have more success and probably get your costs to go down too, because it will have the viral element socially will be baked in at that point. Right. Whereas if you're starting from ground zero locally, you're just going to end up paying a lot more money.
Yeah, it's so expensive. And the other thing too is that if you start wide, you can also gain more insights into, you know, I really let Facebook do the work and tell me, you know, obviously I'm like, oh, I get comments that people compare me to this, or, you know, say that I sound like this, or that I look like this, or whatever. And that completely kind of ruins your opportunity to be unbiased, right? And then your own bias, like who inspired you and whatever. So by running to a wider audience, Facebook can kind of help you discern which of these things, especially if you're running interest-based targeting in those ad sets. Be like, okay, so the modern rock which, you know, it had Nickelback in it. I don't know, right?
Yeah.
You know, the modern rock group didn't do as great as the 70s rock group or as the metal, you know, hair band group or whatever. And so you can kind of see how these different things perform across everything, because in the end, people need to love your music, and where you're from is not going to be the hook. It might be a complimentary thing that comes in later, or it might be a hook after they've been exposed to music and like it to like you more. That's possible. But as far as like a forward-facing fan finder, I'd say go large. If you only want to run perhaps in the US, because there are cultural differences between the green light countries, obviously, even between the UK and here, you know, what people are interested in and how that relates to their Facebook data differs, you know? So if you don't want to go all 9 countries and you still want to at least get what, you know, the American impact of your music is and see what interests are, you know, performing strong there, you know, I would say country is as small as I get, unless I'm doing, you know, warm traffic marketing for a tour. Otherwise, if I'm doing anything cold traffic, the smallest I will go is a country. I won't even go down to states, because I just want Facebook to tell me who I'm looking for, what states love my music, what cities love my music, what interests love my music, who are the people. So yeah, that's what I would recommend for sure.
Totally. I think that there's like a psychological element to this too. Like, you think about like how many local artists there are in a given city. There's a lot, you know? And if you're just running traffic at you know, at the beginning to your city, you're kind of in the minds of those people who might be seeing you just another name in the hat of the local bands or artists or whatever that they see. But when you're going wider and starting to build up a fan base elsewhere, there can become this moment of ownership, I think, that, you know, the people from your town may start to take of you when they see like other people adopting or buying in to your music. I think that that's a very real thing that can happen. You think about one of my favorite bands is a band from Philly called The Wonder Years. And I've been listening to them since I was in high school. I saw them at VFW halls and stuff like that. And you know, once they really started to take off right around like 2009, 2010, a lot of their music had Philly imagery in it, so to speak, in the lyrics, and references. And once it started to take off all around the world, Philadelphia like owned the shit out of them. Like the punk scene in Philadelphia really took to them and was like, these are our boys.
Right.
Like much more so than when they were just a local band. I think that same, you know,
Totally,
and this was before, I mean, I don't want to say it was before Facebook ads, but this was before, you know, before we were having conversations like this.
Right.
And I think that the same kind of principle applies. Even like, you know, cultural kind of icons. Here's another example from Philly. A couple years ago, the Flyers released announced the Gritty mascot, and everyone in Philadelphia at first was like, what the fuck is this thing? Like, this is awful. Like, we don't like it. And then within about 24 hours, the rest of the country started to talk shit on Gritty. And then all of Philadelphia was like, wait a minute, that's ours. You can't talk about it. And all of a sudden it became this cultural icon that everybody in the city fell in love with. The same thing can happen, I think, when it comes to, you know, artists. Hopefully the rest of the world doesn't hate you and then your city owns you. But you can see the point that I'm getting at.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's funny because I lived north of Baltimore, you know, and that's kind of where my career started. And we had, you know, 2 bands that came kind of from that area. Good Charlotte came from Waldorf, Maryland, which is actually south of where you are, Jack. Even though Maryland is mostly north of DC, there's a little wing that's out south. And so Good Charlotte was from there, and All Time Low was from Towson. And I played venues in Towson, and actually went to Towson University for a while for vocal performance. Did not graduate because I didn't want to sing opera. Thank you, Towson University. You couldn't be a singer without learning part classical, which is ridiculous. But anyway, so, but yeah, that was a thing. Everyone was very proud. And that was in 2008, 2009. So All Time Low was more of a thing then. Good Charlotte was definitely, still, not where they are now, which is much more settled. So, there was a lot of pride locally, but that didn't happen when they were starting out. That happened after they were on, alt press and in Rolling Stone and whatever. So yeah, I mean, you just can't assume that there's going to be any kind of local, the same is true. Bob Dylan. Bob Dylan was born in my hometown, Duluth, Minnesota. I think he was like a child when they moved to Hibbing, Minnesota, which was only a little ways away. And like people will talk about that, up there. And, obviously this is a man that is absolutely legendary now, but he had to move away from Minnesota to get his music career going, really. And definitely away from northern Minnesota, which is, we're practically Canadian up there. So it's one of those things where you just don't want to try to capitalize on that, because in the end, that's not what's going to bring you great fans. What's going to bring you great fans is going to be, people who love your music. Again, that said, I think when it comes to touring, it's a much more complicated conversation, but you probably don't want to be, in my opinion, you shouldn't be marketing a tour to cold audiences. And I know a lot of indies do it. It's not, I don't think it's a good thing to do. I think that you should allow your fans and the presence of your fans to tell you where to tour, and not vice versa. So, but, outside of touring, I don't see any reason to go, with a specific locale.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I'm with you 100%.
Word.
Well, this is a good one too, coming up here. How important is privacy? What do you do when fans friend request your personal profile? Do I need to give my fans full access to me to keep them interested?
You know what I think about this, Jack?
I do. I do know what you think.
Should we revisit it at the top of this episode where I'm like, stay out of my stuff?
There we go. There's the answer.
Yeah. Well, I know people who, weren't famous and now are famous, right? Weren't famous when I met them and got to know them, but now they are. And I've watched people who guarded themselves from the beginning, and I've watched people who didn't. And I think there's definitely fallout when you don't. Now, if you're never going to be famous, the same thing still applies, right? I mean, I don't even have a relationship status on my Facebook profile that I have as friends, So I'm a little bit more private about my life. But I think that the key to it, to answer the question literally, I do not add fans to my personal profile. I just decline and ignore them. They don't get a notification that it's been declined, and they can go find my page. If they searched my personal profile, they're probably already on my page, or it also came up in the same search. So I don't add people I don't know. I really don't even add indies if we haven't met in person or had a significant conversation. I keep my Facebook profile pretty clean, which is, not everybody is that strict on it. So, it's a personal judgment call. But I think more importantly is that my fans feel like they have complete access to me through the channels by which I give them said access.
Yes, I was just going to say that. Yes, that's so good.
Because the key is that they should feel like they have full access to you, but in the specific channels that you give them, right? So fans reply to my emails and I reply back. They, talk to me in the DMs and I reply. They message me on Facebook and I reply if I see their message within 24 hours, and so Facebook doesn't ban me, but there are these very specific channels and they know they're going to get a response from me, and they have a huge amount of access, so to speak. I think access is not about actually granting people access to your life. I think access is about being present for them to have an interface with you. And if you can, do that strategically, people are never going to feel like they don't have access to you just because they can't stalk every little thing that you do online or in person. I don't think that should be the goal of Access. I think the goal of Access should be communication. So that's kind of where I stand on that. I have public profiles, and those are for fans. I have like 1 or 2 private profiles, but for the most part, I don't do a lot on social media. I rely a lot on hard mail because I do get fan mail and I do reply to those as well. And then, my specified channels. And if a fan contacts me outside those channels, I just, I don't do anything with it. I just let it either sit there in my unreads or, because they'll be trained that this is not how they get access to you. You can train them to access you elsewhere.
Yeah, I think that's so well said. I'm on board with all of that. That's largely how I interact with fans as well. I've never been one to accept friend requests from fans. Rarely does one slip through the cracks. Every once in a while, I don't really even accept friend requests on Facebook from strangers anymore.
Yeah, me either.
Because I got inundated with marketers trying to spam me and sell me their garbage.
I hate that.
So I stopped doing that. But the same applies to controlling the channels where that access exists. Is it your email list? Is it your DMs on IG? Is it allowing them to follow you on Twitter or whatever that is? I think like letting people know where the goods are is probably the best way to give people access, because like honestly, like you don't want to follow me on my personal Facebook anyway. Like, there's nothing there for you.
I post on there like once every 3 weeks. I posted one this morning about Britney Spears. See, you're missing out.
Yeah.
I was like, best album by Britney Spears, Blackout. If you don't believe me, go listen to it. But other than that, I think that's the first thing I've posted in weeks. And I'm not a rampant poster. I mean, if you look at my IG, you're not going to see a lot of recent stuff, although that's largely because I archive it. And I use my Instagram more as a billboard. What are the things that people are going to see when they first get to my profile? They don't need to see that picture of that piece of cream cheese, as yummy as that was. I'm only going to have things displaying permanently that, give people insight into who I am and my history as an artist and stuff like that. But that said, fans know they can contact me there. So I also say it in every email. I say it in the footer of every email. If you ever want to reply or tell me what you think or whatever, that's in there. And they know that if they email me, it might not be immediately, but they will hear from me. I think it's more about just channeling them in the right place. Another reason why I think this is really important is that you want to have that all trackable. And I don't mean in a data way. I mean in a workflow kind of way. Like you only can maintain so many things before your head just starts to spin. And I know indies know it. We talk about it on this podcast all the time. We are dealing with work overwhelm. There's so many things we need to do. So if you only have 3 to 4 major channels by which fans can access you, you don't have to check 15 places, right?
Yeah, that's so true.
So I think
it's not scalable.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's important to, let people know, hey, this is where you're going to get a hold of me. And outside of that, I can't promise you anything, and then stick to it. Don't let fans navigate around the system. I have had fans show up at my house when I wasn't guarded enough about where I lived. I used to live next door to Haley Williams, and she had people go to her house because she was on MTV Cribs, and they showed the front of her house for 3 seconds, and then people found it, So these are cautionary tales. You can find out a lot of things out about people using Google Maps or anything online. So, I would definitely say guard it, even if you're never going to be famous. Just more than anything, protect your time. And I think that's even more than privacy, is you're protecting your time and protecting your attention so that you can pay attention to the fans that contact you through the right channels and not get distracted.
Hard agree.
Yeah.
I think, I mean, the crazy thing is like I've seen it happen at much smaller levels than a lot of indies might realize, I've seen artists that have, very small followings have people show up at their houses, and it's always uncomfortable.
It's so creepy.
Yeah, no matter how well a fan means, like, oh, I came to drop something off, that will always feel like an invasion of your privacy.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I definitely, yes. In fact, I had a really sweet man. He ordered me a present from Amazon because it was his book. He wrote a book, which was a murder mystery that had to do with music, and it was totally appropriate as far as like the subject matter of the book, right? It wasn't like some creepy thing. And he had written it, and he wanted to share his creation with me, but it showed up at my house. And I still to this day don't know if he put the address in there or if he was able to search me on Amazon and Amazon didn't show my address but allowed him to send it to me. But it was creepy, and it totally took away from what would have been a really sweet and positive moment, because I was kind of creeped out.
What's crazy is if he had just reached out to you and asked, you probably would have bought his book.
Oh, I would have totally bought his book. No, I was very grateful that he wanted to gift it. I mean, he was a creative trying to share with another creative. But I have a fan mail address, which is not my home. And if he had asked for that, I would have willingly given it, So yeah, I mean, even if they don't intend to, for a second, you might be like, well, dang, they could show up here and So anyway, I think I think even more so, you can't assume that people aren't going to do this stuff until you're famous. I'm not famous. People have done it to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If they love you enough and they love your music enough, even in a non-dangerous way, they can be very interested in you. And I think it's important to direct them to the correct channels. And that also, again, protects your time as well.
Totally. Love it.
Love
it. We got two more, and these are good. These are very good. This is actually, I think this is an important one for critical thinking, especially if you're an artist that has, a schedule of singles that you're going to be releasing. Question says, hey, everyone, I think this is a little bit of a noob question. Let's say I'm releasing new music starting in January, approximately a song a month. I want to run a fan finder campaign. Does my fan finder video need to be related to the first track I release, or can it be another upcoming video for a song? If I'm releasing multiple tracks over a year, how do I prioritize which is a fan finder? I've got some thoughts on this. I think you should be making fan finders for a lot of your songs.
Yeah, don't be like me.
Yeah.
I have one fan finder that's a lyric video for one song.
Hey, it served you well.
Don't be me. Don't be me, though. Don't follow my example in that department.
But totally, I think you should have fan finders for a lot of your songs, and you should be testing them
exactly
often to see what's going to stick, because you're probably going to have songs that have different feels, different styles, so you're probably going to have a different kind of fan finder for those that will attract different kinds of people. So in terms of prioritizing one over the other, I don't necessarily think that that's a great way to look at it. If you've got a song coming out in January and you want to rush to make a fan finder for that, I might encourage you not to bother rushing, and focus on putting something together that's either really great for that song and then start running it after it drops, or you can totally just plan one for your upcoming song and run it ahead of time before the drop. That's totally fine. If anything, it builds up anticipation for people watching it, which I've seen happen often, people start to clamor in the comments and say, like, where can I find this? Where can I find this?
Exactly.
And then when it drops, you've got an easy conversation point to talk about it.
Well, and I think, even though I haven't done it on my account, I've done it on many other artists' accounts. I just want to be like full disclosure because I haven't done it myself, but I have done it for many other people. I think when you're launching this many singles, you have the opportunity to make, fan finder videos. And it doesn't matter if the song is coming out in a month. It doesn't matter if it came out 6 months ago, 10 years ago, right? My fan finder was from a song that came out in 2015 and still, did amazing. People didn't care. I had a ton of Shazams go up, I think really you don't know what song is going to hit what people. And if anything, totally. I would put, I would kind of invest in having different ad sets, but then putting all of those videos in at the ad level, And if you do want to do it in a way that is kind of promoting this, this whole thing, like you can basically this is what I would do. I would say you put out video 1, right? And you don't typically use this kind of copy, but in this case, I think you could put out, say it's coming out January 1st, out January 1st, because and then like your clever copy, right? Or you could put your clever copy and then put out January 1st. But because if you put out January 1st, it not only works in the future, but it works in the past. So when you advertise to cold, right? And see how people respond to it. And then when it launches, put it on your page, publish that ad to your page, because once you run an ad, you cannot change the copy on that without doing some really weird stuff that I wouldn't recommend. And we're not going to talk about that right now, but it involves shutting down everything, deleting all of the ads and then redoing it. So we're not going to talk about that, but, that's what I would do. I would run the video to cold traffic, people who I know aren't already following me, because they're not going to care that a song is out, and basically, let people know that it's coming out, because when you say out January 1st, they'll know that it's not out yet. And then when it does drop, then publish it to your page and run that to your warmth. At that point, it serves two purposes, right? Because your existing warmth is going to see the proof that you gathered through the fan finder. But then also like the warm audience can rejuvenate everyone else on that post because you're now doing both. Then when you do the next ad, or the next video, put that as an ad in the same ad set and see how they perform against each other, and then the next video, and then the next video, and then the next video. Because you might find out that your 4th video is the one that gets the best results, is the one that more people react to. So, but you should keep that first one running in case it's the best one, and that way you can still use it as a promotion to your warm audience. In theory, all of the people who are cold traffic on video 1 will then qualify as warm traffic for video 2, and warm traffic for video 3, and warm traffic for video 4, right? So yeah, I wouldn't get too locked in on which one, to prioritize as a fan finder. I'd say run them against each other and let them duke it out, because people are going to basically make the choice, right? It's the People's Choice Awards, and they're going to choose which video is the most successful, because Facebook's going to serve it up and let you know.
And that way, taking this approach, like you win no matter what.
Yeah.
Because you're going to find a video that performs really well, and then that's a marketing asset that you can continue to use.
Exactly.
Instead of just, hoping and praying that the one that you kind of arbitrarily picked works out, and then if it doesn't, you're like, oh well, I've got this thing that kind of works but not really.
Right.
You're able to iterate and keep going. I think that this is especially important in like the beginning stages of building a fan base, is getting that awareness happening from a number of different angles. I know this is what Cirque's in the middle of doing for his music right now.
Right.
Is just lots of top of funnel.
Yeah.
And obviously supporting that with pieces of the marketing that are supplementing that and taking people to the next step. But nonetheless, lots of top of funnel happening.
Yeah. And I mean, some of the ads I am running are they're for opt-ins and for sales, but a lot of them are montages of my music. One of them is literally only a minute long, which I know I talked earlier about 2.5 minutes, but this isn't retargeting. I'm not using this to retarget video views. So it's a different objective. And this 1 minute video has 3 songs in it. So it's possible that some of these people have heard 1. It's possible they've heard all 3. It's possible they heard 2 of 3. And so what those different people take from it will totally depend on their previous exposure to my stuff, right? But either way, I might be targeting them to buy, or I might be targeting them to opt in. And I have the same video with these different songs in them switched around, right? They're in a different order, or they're different songs, because each of them finds different people that identify most with the first 3 seconds of that video. I have, different behind the scenes videos in there, or live performance videos, and I've switched those around. so that whatever it is that's the hook at the top of the 3 seconds, right? Like the algorithm is doing the work. The machine is finding who is going to be the best candidate for that. And I just leave all of those kind of running against each other. And there are some that obviously that are the obvious favorites, right? And that are getting me the best results. And I have no reason to question that. So I think one thing to note is that it's very unlikely that you're going to see some major spike from this fan finder on release day, whether you're running to cold, whether you're running to warm, it really, your direct contact lists, like your mailing list or your SMS list, whatever it is that you have, those are going to be the ones that you're going to be able to drive to the track that day, that even the first week,
Right.
And that's something I think to focus on, is that the contrary to what the music industry tries to tell us, you're not going to be able to just get everybody running for the release of this song. So instead, look at this as a long game. Know that you're releasing these and that you have strategy to it, but also know that really when it comes to advertising, you're going to be playing the long game here to see which is the best fit.
Yeah. And once you find it, then, you've got something that works and you can kind of repeat the process.
Ride the wave.
Start finding new ones. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. Let that one go and make another one and make another. I mean, I again, not me, but a lot of, even employees of Entrepreneur, they've made so many like fan finder videos and run so many of them and found obvious winners and obvious losers. And, it's really inspiring to see that. And in theory, if you're creative, that should come relatively easily, is to just keep making all of these different things and then ride the wave of the ones that stick.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we see that at IndieX as well, even with artists that are, well beyond the stage of really needing a whole lot of top of funnel, like household name artists. A lot of them, week to week are reaching out to me and being like, Jack, we got a new fan finder, want to run this.
Yeah.
We've got a new single dropping and we got a fan finder for it. That I don't think I can state enough how over time that's been very impactful for their fan base building, even though they were in a place where they didn't necessarily need to be pulling that thread. They were, and down the line, man, when it came time for a bigger campaign, the warm audience was just there.
Right. Yeah, totally. Yep. So,
well, speaking of
that's helpful.
Warm audience,
that was kind of all the things.
No, we're covering a lot of ground.
Yeah.
Here's the lightning round. Last question. And speaking of warm audience, this is a question about the fan journey, the buddy system. I DM'd my Facebook page likes offering a link to our new single and got a whole lot of blowback. Anyone else? So it sounds like you cold DM'd everybody with your link.
Right.
Yeah, that'll happen. I
hate that. I hate getting that.
Imagine scraping an email list of like hip hop fans or rock fans, or buying an email list and then cold emailing a whole bunch of people a link to your hot new track. How's that going to go over?
Yeah.
Not too well.
It's funny. Like, first off, your Facebook page, I feel like this isn't even in the terms of service. Is it? Unless they were active in the last 24 hours?
I think that it's okay within the terms of service so long as you're not using the API to do it.
Oh, is that how that works?
I believe so.
Well, good, because I'm sick of ignoring fans who messaged me 26 hours ago. Well, flip.
Yeah.
Expletive. Learn something new every day. See, guys? Nobody knows everything. And the other question I'd have is, was this DM from the Facebook page, or was it a DM from, personal? Because I have seen people do that from their own profiles as well, which is even worse. Also, but like,
talk about letting your guard down.
Yeah.
They've got you now if they want you.
Yeah. It would have been so much. First off, don't do that. Right. I hate when I get that. It's like, even I've never participated in follow back stuff, but like back when Twitter was like, on the rise, like the thing was always, if someone, if you follow someone, they follow you back, and then you have this bot that sends them a link to your single, and like, bleh, I just hated it. I hated it so much. I hated every time I got that. We get those in, the Indepreneur support inbox. I know Gracie is constantly having to like filter out people who are just spamming our support email with their stuff because they're not even paying attention to who they're sending it to. And it makes it even more obvious that they're not. So yeah, I think that's just definitely an invasion of, time and privacy, really. But I think the other thing that you could do instead, I know it's not free, but it's really, really cheap to run a reach campaign to those people. And, put that in a post. Be like, and only serve it to your page. Like, you can post it to your page or not post it to your page. You could literally do that with like a green light warmth boosting style, but with reach as the objective. And that would be so much more effective. And then they get to decide if they want to do that. You can't assume that offering someone a link is like going to come off as a good-natured present, right? It's going to look like self-promo. People don't like it. So always like give them the opportunity to opt for something like that. And, definitely don't just message people unsolicited. They're just like record labels. They're not going to like it either way.
Yeah. Yeah, if anything, like they'll be even more testy than record labels. They might not just ignore you. They probably won't. If you're getting blowback, like, yeah, you're going to get people telling you to F off.
Yeah.
It's really like skipping steps in the buddy system, like trying to go right to permission on a channel where somebody maybe has never even talked to you.
Right.
Yeah. It's tough. That's like assault.
Yeah, definitely.
I don't like it either.
That's
I
not
think
hand to waist. That's something else.
Yeah, for sure. I think your point to running a reach campaign, you could make that really impactful, and the messaging could be way more like, hey, you could even be transparent about like, I'm paying for this ad to reach only certain people in my fan base because, and you can kind of break the wall there, the fourth wall there, so to speak.
I love that.
Yeah. And you can be really cool about it. And I think that will resonate with them more so than if you were just like, yo, in the DMs, here's my link.
Right.
Check out my fire new track on SoundCloud,
Nobody's into it. It's amazing. Yeah. And for any of you running any ads that is retargeting, like, if you if it's some kind of special offer or a special announcement or a special anything, or if it's not special, make it special. Like if you can run an ad that's like, yo, are you, this is an advertisement, right? And this is the gist. This is not copy. I'm not the copywriter on the Indepreneur team. But basically that is like, look, this is an ad. I know you see ads all the time. So I figured I would pay for an ad in your timeline for this cool thing. And I'm not giving it to anyone. I specifically am sending it to you, being like, I'm, advertising only to these people, or I'm only advertising this to, people who met these qualifications or whatever. I love when artists do that because we know there's ads, and it's funny because with a fan finder, we don't want to look like an ad, right? With a video view campaign, We're like, this isn't an ad. It has sponsored, but you didn't notice because it's a really cool video, right? And we don't put a button on it and we make it on the super DL, right? But when you are running ads, like one thing I've seen Jesse do it, Basic Printer. Don't spam his stuff either. I've seen Basic Printer run ads, and he's so cheeky about it, and he's just making fun of the fact that we have to see ads every 5 seconds on our timeline. So think about it like you are the user, right? You see ads all the time, and they're for this at-home gym thing or supplements or whatever, for this crap that you don't care about. And then all of a sudden there's this person that's like, ads, am I right? Well, how about this then? Or I'm paying to reach you, and when you do stuff like that, you're taking a friendly blow at advertising in general, really making yourself identifiable to that person, and kind of hitting this commiseration point of like, well, ads suck, but this one won't. And it's because I specifically want you to see it, I
Talk about
love
a cool
when artists
pattern
do that.
interrupt. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
I love it too. That's awesome. Well, hopefully that gives hopefully we were gentle enough with that answer, but I think that does touch on a lot of
No.
why it's so
I'm sorry.
important.
If you're DMing your page likes a spam link, you don't get my kindness because it's really 101 and people are going to react that way. So no, I'm not going to be soft because it's just so offensive. Like, don't do it. Don't. As Gracie would say, don't you do it.
We just flipped places. Usually I'm the one who's like, no, your marketing's bad. Don't do it. But hopefully
there's something very specific about fan treatment for me though, those people
sure.
deserve the most respect and the most, you need to give to those people. They're the ones who are giving you a job. Don't bother them or waste their time.
Yeah. I hope that we outlined why you shouldn't do that
Right.
or why it causes blowback,
But also what you can do instead.
I mean, exactly. Exactly.
See, we offer a solution even when we put the smack down on your face.
we just want to make sure that everybody is doing the best.
No, for sure. Yeah. And if that person does that reach campaign next time, instead of DMing those people, I'll bet the response will be a 180, and that's really all we're looking to do here. Well, this
100%.
has been so much fun. Obviously, we went a little long this time. I told you couldn't keep me on track. I had so much to say. Oh my gosh. So, but good news for me and hopefully you guys is that we get to do this again next week. We have even better questions. I just love hearing these because I think it's one thing to consume creative juice and then try and go find all of this actionable stuff. But also it's like, all right, well, what about these little facets of things, right? And it's harder to drill into that. So these questions help us really figure out what you guys want to know and what those little facets are that maybe aren't in our trainings or maybe we haven't covered in a podcast before. So keep them coming. I'm looking forward to reading down more of them next week. You have anything else, Jack?
I'm excited too. I can't wait. If you guys want to submit a question, anything burning on your minds, or maybe you got follow-up questions about some of the stuff that we talked about here today, we'll include the link in the show notes for a little website page where you can drop a question. Totally anonymous. We're not going to ask you for anything. So hit us with what you got and it'll be a good time.
Right. We're not going to ask you to DM us. We're not going to ask for your email. We're not even going to ask for your name. We definitely won't send you our link when the single comes out.
I will not send you my music. No.
Awesome. All right. Well, anyway, guys, thanks so much. We're looking forward to the next hot seat. We'll see you then on Creative Juice.